Good day, but your children couldn't thank you enough. Good day, good day, good day. We like to thank you, good day, but your children couldn't thank you enough. Good day, good day, good day. For your spiritual regeneration movement foundation. We'd like to thank you, good day, just for being our guiding light. Good day, good day, good day. We'd like to thank you, good day, just for seeing us through the night. Good day, good day, good day. It's a spiritual regeneration movement foundation. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, good day. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, good day. We'd like to thank you, good day, but the children couldn't thank you enough. Good day, good day, good day. We'd like to thank you, good day, but your children couldn't thank you enough. Good day, good day, good day. For your spiritual regeneration movement foundation.
Hello everybody and welcome to this first satsang gathering of a monthly series of talks of Paul Mason, whom we all know, at least those who appreciate his Facebook sites like Roots of TM and his books, his biographies of the great yogis we all know. My name is Roland Hartmann from Austria, and I have got the honor to moderate this session. And I'm a teacher since 1974, and I'm living in Graz, Austria. And I would like to introduce you shortly, even though you all know most probably Paul Mason. He is the author of quite some books, biographies. He's born in 1952 and was initiated in Rishikesh in 1970. And he is, as I said, the biography of Gurudev and Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and also about the Beatles and their connections to the meditation programs of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And we are going to have today quite some time to have Paul present, and it's been a great chance to hear him talk. So far he has been writing, and now we are going to have the joy to listen to his voice. Now, Paul, may I ask you, before we start into the depth of your expertise about the biography of Gurudev, how did it come? How did it happen? How was it? How was your motivation, or what was your motivation to travel to India in those days when the flights were not so easy to handle? And what was the reason you take the journey and the adventure to travel to India and come across the great saints you are going to talk about to us today and to start with? Please, Paul Mason, the microphone is yours.
Well, thank you everybody for coming along. And to answer Roland, why did I go to India in 1970? I was 18. I still am in many ways, but I was 18 and I was, if you want to use the modern parlance, I was spiritually dissatisfied. That's simple. It's like we'd had the 60s revolution and I couldn't really see any place for me living in Britain, living in a commercial society. I just really at a loose end not being able to see my place in the scheme of things. I'd held illusions about being a rock star. I think I still do. See what I mean? I'm still 18. I still have the same illusion. But something kind no, there was a spiritual dissatisfaction. I had attempted to meditate and I'd been quite successful. I used to sit on a chair regularly, just relaxing after work. But I never really thought that it was meditation. But it was when I look back at it. That's what I've been doing. And it was very effective. And still, I stopped doing it because I stopped working. So I didn't have that routine of coming back after work to relax. Anyway, it I was in my mum's front room and I was twiddling a globe, whoosh, 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 and I saw all the countries spinning around the globe, and I thought it was pretty far out, and then I let it slow, and I thought, God, it's a huge world, and I know nothing of it. I found Britain, it's like this tiny little island, and I'm thinking, I know nothing of this big world, and perhaps other people are making a better job of living than we are in Britain. I mean, that's a real shock, that idea, but let's go and test it. And I thought, I'm going to go to India. And I guess I thought I was going to fly there, but my possessions didn't really allow me to do that. I tried to sell records and stuff, and I found myself with only £40. And my girlfriend did the same thing, Italian girlfriend. She had £40. So between us, we couldn't have bought one flight to India. So the idea was, well, okay, so we hitchhiked. So we hitchhiked across Europe, across Northern Africa, across the Middle East. And finally, we got to India. And this idea of it being some sort of pilgrimage because of spiritual dissatisfaction had largely evaporated, to be honest, because of the reality of day-to-day hitchhiking and finding a place to live and finding a place to eat. But when we got to India, something made me curious as to go and speak with this Indian philosopher teacher, Maharishi or something, whatever this guy's name was. I'd heard that he was a philosopher, that the Beatles had been to see him, and I thought I could go and see him and have a chat with him. And as I was telling Roland the other day, it was like, well, I'd only come up with two ideas about philosophy. One of them being that you can't be unhappy and happy at the same time. And I'll discuss that with him. And the other one being that I felt that going through no exit signs had got me, it's difficult to explain, but by being disobedient at times had actually paid off for me. I wanted to discuss those. I thought I had the basis of a good chat with this world famous philosopher. I didn't realize that he taught meditation, but when I got to his so-called academy, he wasn't there, but a couple of Europeans were, and they persuaded me to learn to meditate. I'll be honest, I wasn't really very interested. I was interested in being around because the jungle was there, the river was there, and the people were so nice, the local people. But I turned up to be initiated. And it was rather effective. And that's why I'm here today. Because Gurudev, who appeared in that portrait at everybody's initiation, that mysterious man in that portrait had given me the opportunity to let go. And that spiritual dissatisfaction that I'd felt just like evaporated. And it's never returned. I will say that. That might sound like, oh, he's born again. But in a way I was. It was like, that was what I wanted. I wanted to let go of the duality that I was feeling, that the thinking person needed to relax and let go of being the thinker. And on that occasion, October 1970, I let go of being the thinker and just disappeared into that silence and that totality. And it wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal. It was amazing, but there was nothing amazing about it. And it was very empowering. And my whole life has been lived from that point. It hasn't always been good, the life, but it's always had that as being the underpinning of it. It's always had that as having some sort of stability coming from that.
Do you mean,
And
Paul, do you mean that it was not your intention to write a biography of Gurudev or Maharishi in those days?
no,
You just traveled by what you just said, because of your spiritual motivation to meet and get to know this continent of India. And so it just happened to be a part of your life to go into that space where people or individualities like Gurudev and Maharishi were living.
Sure, it was a whole community. I mean, the community in Swag Ashram at that time was a very sweet experience. Swag Ashram means the ashram of heaven. And for a whole month, for me, it was that. It was like, it was a blessing. It was wonderful. But as for writing about Maharishi or Gurudev, now that came later. After I came back to Britain, I had to do something other than work and meet family and play about. I had to do something with my bonds. I had to do some thinking. And so I did, I learned a bit of Hindi. I studied Indian culture. And in so doing, found out how little there was known about Maharishi, how little there was known about Maharishi's teachings, and how little, almost nothing, there was known about Gurudev. So when I was a kid, I was an enthusiast for detection and also for archaeology. So those two guys, Gurudev and Maharishi, were basically huge sources of interest to me because of their mysteriousness, of how little anybody knew about them, really. Yeah. And even within the movement, even within the TM movement, one was not encouraged to ask questions, and one wasn't given really any decent answers about anything. Even to this day. And I'm not blaming them for it, because their role was to teach transcendental meditation. It wasn't to tell me anecdotal stories about Gurudev living in the mountains or in the forests or anything else. So I've had to find that out for myself. And since we're on that topic, that really got some sort of traction on my second visit to India, where I decided to go and track down where these people had been, like to Uttarkashi and to Jyotirmath. I should start now, Roland, really talking about Gurudev. I can't see any other way.
You're welcome to start about. I just want to show that this is the book, one of the books Paul Mason wrote, and you most probably know it. Roots of TM, the Transcendental Meditation of Gurudev and Swami Brahmananda Saraswati and Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. So please, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, here we go. I haven't written a lecture or a talk or anything, so you're going to have to forgive me if it's a bit jaunty. First of all, I'd like to tell you that the portrait that you saw by the... I'll find it again. Is that on screen? No. I need to share. Bear with me for a moment.
Yeah, yes. Well,
Yeah.
while we are waiting, I just want to mention,
There's no waiting.
here we are.
This picture that you saw at your initiation, it was painted by a graphic artist in South India, in about 1956. His name was M.T.V. Acharya, and he was in his 30s when he painted that. But why isn't there a photograph of Gurudev on the initiation? Well, it's peculiar. That was the picture that M.T.V. Acharya was given to create that artistic impression of Gurudev. This comes from about a year earlier. Now, this one here comes from 3 years earlier when Gurudev was still alive. Okay. And this is like a montage. It's like a photo montage. This has been cut out and this bit's been cut out. And then somebody's drawn this and then somebody's put that. So it's a collage. And this was the original picture. This is a picture of Gurudev, whose real name, let's not keep calling him Gurudev. His name was Swami Brahmananda Saraswati. And that is the origin of that picture. And this isn't a slideshow, so I'm going to turn that off. So there we have it. So there he was. Swami Brahmananda Saraswati was the Shankaracharya of Jyotirmath. The Shankaracharya of Jyotirmath is like the highest position in the Hindu faith. I daren't call it a religion. So many people have beliefs of what religion means today. But to him and to the people around him, it was a religion in those days. And he was the top guy. Now, he'd been offered that job in 1908. Okay, the story goes that there was a man-eating tiger in the forests of what is now Madhya Pradesh in the central provinces of India, and it had killed off about 100 people. And the Prime Minister of Nepal had volunteered to come and try and do something about the animal. And in fact, he came down from Nepal and shot the tiger. But it wasn't a fatal wounding. The tiger ran off and they followed it. Okay. And they followed it and they were very surprised where they did find in the woods. They found it being doted on by an old Swami. And the Swami was he was cleaning the wound of the tiger and speaking to it in very conciliatory terms, saying, like, baby, get over the violence, be happy, be full of ananda. And they were absolutely shocked. They're trying to kill this animal because it's like a grave danger. And there's this guy, he's just sweet talking the tiger while he washes his paw. And it's like, they were shocked. And they went to speak to the Swami after the tiger had gone away. They didn't talk to him while the tiger was there, right? Because they're like big, brave, cream puff guys. But when the tiger had gone away, they hung out with him, and he wouldn't speak to them. I don't know why. Presumably he was going through a period of silence, but it hadn't stopped him talking to the tiger, right? So the jury's out on that one. But subsequently, Shamsher Jang Bahadur Rana, the Prime Minister of Nepal, actually the head of Nepal, because he sidelined the royal family, he came back again to meet Swami Brahmananda, and he brought with him a guy called Pandit Hemraj. And Pandit Hemraj was like a very intellectual, very spiritual guy in Nepal. And he subsequently wrote to a Swami Gyanananda Saraswati in India saying, you were asking that there was somebody to fill the job of being Shankaracharya of Jyotirmath. I found the very guy. You've got to come and meet with him. Well, he was offered the job of being Shankaracharya in 1908. Okay. And clearly he didn't accept it. Okay, that goes without saying. But eventually, his primary student, known as Swami Karpatri, real name Swami Hari Hara Ananda, um, he was also offered the post as Shankaracharya because they're not going to wait forever. Do you know? Like as much as most employers will wait like a week, maybe a month, these guys were not going to wait just decade after decade. There hadn't been a Shankaracharya for 165 years. You say, why had there not been a Shankaracharya for 165 years? Two reasons. One was that the Gurkhas had invaded the Kumaon Garhwal region where Jyotirmath is. You don't really want a lot of invaders around when you're being peacenik. And in fact, when I went to Jyotirmath the first time, and I'd been to the ashram there, and the next day I heard all this shooting, and I thought, what's going on? It was a bunch of soldiers on the horizon doing target practice, and that's because of the skirmish with the Chinese. So my suspicion is it's always a sensitive area, being so close to China, so close to Nepal, and that would have had a big influence on whether somebody was going to set up an ashram there, because it's difficult enough to get up there without having like combat as well. The other reason was there was nobody suitable. That's the plain answer. Even when there was no combat up there was still no Shankaracharya, although some people took on the name, but that's another subject. So the person we call Gurudev, he didn't take the job, and Karpatri was offered it, and he said, no, my own teacher, Swami Brahmananda, should be the one, and he continued not to take it. Now we should find out who was this guy, who was Gurudev. He was born in let's say it's Margshirsha Shukla, the 10th, in the calendar of Vikram of 1928. Now, in plain English, that's the 21st of December 1871. Now, some people contest that date, but rather ignorantly, because that was the date given throughout his time as a Shankaracharya. The only time that was changed was either by a press report on his death, they got it wrong, and a publication that came out within the TM movement, alas, in 1965, which was also incorrect. But prior to that, that was the date always given, and that's the date which I'm sticking to. Anyway, he ran away from home at 9 years old because he was being scheduled to have an arranged marriage. He ran away. He ran away from school in Benares, and he went away for quite a long time, scampered off upriver, and he got as far as Allahabad, and then he got as far as Rishikesh, and then he got a police subpoena or whatever to get him home. And that was it, end of job. And they still tried to marry him off, and he still didn't want to get married. He's only 9. You know, I don't know how many 9-year-old kids want to get married, but he didn't. And he convinced his community, his local pandit, his mother particularly, that he really wasn't going to wear this. And eventually she capitulated and told him not to become a bhikkhamanga sadhu, which means a beggar, a vagrant, a tramp, and never to reach out his hand to other people for like charity. And that stuck with him through his life. It was a persistent preoccupation never to reach out his hand to anybody. In fact, he banned, when he eventually became a Swami, and he banned anybody from giving him anything. I mean, it's like the most ludicrous story, but it's the one. Anyway, he found a teacher, Dandi Swami Krishnananda Saraswati, and he stayed with him up in Uttarkashi for something like about 13 years. He was sent to his own cave and spent a lot of time in Sadhana. It was an all-male community. He was given expert tuition. It was, I guess, like going to public school in a way, a very intense amount of information given to him. He was extraordinarily well read. As a teacher, he was extraordinarily well read. Now, when he eventually accepted the job of being Shankaracharya of Jyotirma in 1941, you've got to ask yourself, what did he become? He lost his sort of the ability just to go and come and go and do what he wanted. He was now in an official job. And the thing about a Shankaracharya is he has to embody the thinking and the personality of the first Shankaracharya, whose name was Adi Shankara. Now, for those who don't know, Adi actually means the first. So when we say Adi Shankara, we're not like saying Bob or John or something. We're saying the first Shankaracharya. And that's important to understand. And that is said by the Jyotirmath to have been about 485 BC. Now, a lot of people say that Adi Shankara lived, I don't know, in the early part of AD, but there's no dispute. We're talking about Adi Shankara. That was the first one. And there were many, many, many people who assumed the name of Shankara or Shankaracharya. Acharya meaning teacher, Shankar meaning Shiva. And in fact, even Adi Shankara was seen to be an avatar. That means a living incarnation of a deity. He was seen to be the living presence of the Hindu god, or anybody's god, depends how you look at things, Lord Shiva. So Adi Shankara wasn't just another guy. He wasn't John Shankar. He was actually the only living incarnation of Lord Shiva, the king of the yogis, as far as Hindu mystics are concerned. And anybody who became a Shankaracharya took all that on themselves. So this guy who was born Rajaram Mishra, who'd become Swami Brahmananda, he wasn't just spouting his own thoughts. He was actually the portal of understanding what Adi Shankara was talking about. This is something that, in order to know who was Gurudev, you've got to understand. He wasn't himself, if you want. He didn't have his own personal philosophy. It wasn't like John Lennon who said, oh, well, you know, my point of view is this, or my point of view is that. And that's no put down to anybody who has a point of view, has a philosophy. It's just that Gurudev didn't. That's on his own confession. He did not come over saying something fresh and original. So that could be the end of this lecture, really, couldn't it? That could be the end of the talk. It's like nothing to say here. But the thing is that although he did personify in many, many ways the teachings of Adi Shankara with his Advaita philosophy, meaning the non-duality. And if we pause a moment and find out what Advaita means, doesn't it mean that you've got beyond the disconnect? The very thing that I was talking about, the spiritual strain in one's mind, isn't that disconnect where the thinking mind and the being are separated, and that in meditation one loses that dissonance, you know? And personally, that's what happened to me. And Gurudev has stated that Advaita is that situation where you come to that settled state. So I'm very interested in Gurudev's breadth of vision. Not only was he able to encourage all his fellow countrymen, all the fellow Indians, all the fellow Hindus, to embrace all the beliefs they had about their gods and so forth. I'm being brought a cup of tea. Just pop it there, thanks. Hey, tea must go on. Thank you.
Always. Yes.
So yeah, if you're born in India, you're born with the story of amazing stories about the powers of the gods and even those who oppose the gods. So when Adi Shankara came in, there was a need from his side to revive Hinduism, to restore Hinduism to a good state. It had been through the wars, and he tried to reconcile all the different beliefs. He tried to point out that whoever believed in this god or that god, all the 33,000 gods and goddesses there are, were all actually underneath it. There was just the one pervasive being, Paramatma. And he did a good job of it. He managed to kind of pull people around so that instead of them being like partisan and saying, oh, well, I'm in favor of Lord Shiva, and somebody else said, oh, that's rubbish, I'm in favor of Krishna, and all this sort of disputations, that he actually managed to try and encourage people to see the unity of all the different paths. And he was relatively successful. And when Gurudev came on the scene in 1st of April 1941, he did exactly the same. He actually stepped into the guy's shoes and did exactly the same thing. He then went out and told everybody that a mat for the tea. Thank you. Good. Thank you. And where were we? Yeah, he got everybody to look, to reevaluate their own religion and encouraged them to do all the good things that they've been taught to do and to respect the guru and to respect this tradition. So he was a very big on traditionalism, but traditionalism as Adi Shankara. So in many ways, their world is counterpoint to the world that we live in today. We're all about free choice. We do what we want to do. Laissez-faire society. What shall I do today? Oh, I won't do anything. I can't be bothered. It's like that is not the world that Gurudev was encouraging. And it's not the world that Mahesh Srivastava got involved in. Mahesh Srivastava met Gurudev about a year before he became Shankaracharya. And he was very civil to Mahesh. And from here, I won't call Maharishi Mahesh because he wasn't called Maharishi then, and it would be wrong for me to address him as that now. And he told Mahesh that he ought to go keep on with his schooling, etc., etc. And at that time, he was working for the gun carriage factory as some sort of clerk, I believe. The gun carriage factory was like a principal munitions base for the British in Jabalpur, where he lived. And in fact, the wider family worked there. It was quite a big deal for the Srivastavas. Many of them worked at the gun carriage factory in Jabalpur. And indeed, it was about 2 years later, some time after Gurudev had become the Shankaracharya, that Mahesh turned up on the street and found Gurudev, in a parade, and he was startled and impressed. And afterwards, he went to a meeting where Gurudev was meant to be, and he asked whether he could speak a poem in praise of Gurudev. But it's not the thing that people did. It wasn't like you don't get students turning up saying, could I read a poem, please? It just wasn't on. I mean, it was a serious-minded meeting, and basically it was pundits, and it was a bit of a joke, this guy turning up. But the organizer looked at the poem and realized that what had been written was actually rather good. So he said, oh, okay, I'll tell you when you can do it. And he did, he read his poem. And shortly after, tried to convince his parents, who wanted to marry him off. There's this recurring story of boys in India being sold off as as marriage. I mean, let alone the women being sold off as marriage. And he didn't want to do it. He said he was more like a renunciate. He wanted to spend his time in the company of holy men and so forth. And it took a lot of convincing them, because actually there's not much of a future if your son goes off and lives in an ashram. It's not really very good for the family's reputation. It's like, oh, how's your son doing? It's like, oh, he's sweeping the floor in an ashram in Benares. But that's what he was doing. He went and spent many years as a sort of an attendant in the ashram. He didn't have any formal status. When in time a book came out, which he'd been asked to put together, he was self-described as I wrote it down, kinka. And you might well say, what's a kinka? And a kinka means, I've got it written down, but I know what it means. It means servant, and it also means attendant, and it means slave. These are the ancient definitions. So he was either being modest or he was being factual and saying that's all he was. And that's after 5 years of being at the ashram. He called himself an attendant. So he wasn't bigging him up to himself too much at that point. Eventually, he managed to get hold of the role of being Gurudev's secretary. And more than that, much more than that, he became his publicist. And he produced, when eventually he was given the opportunity to become a student of Gurudev and become a brahmachari, he actually really put his back into it and started a newspaper, a weekly newspaper, and it produced pamphlets and books. And in fact, all the material that came out of the ashram was from Mahesh. So whatever people think of him now, or they think of what he must have been like then, he was really the only one who was giving a mouthpiece to Gurudev, to the general public, and to history, that if we're lucky enough to be able to trip over anything that actually is to do with what Gurudev says, the majority of it, at least 90% of it, came from Mahesh. And that's pretty, I mean, he was monomaniacal. As it appears that I am, but no, I have other interests. I am interested in Jeff Beck, the Canned Heat, so don't accuse me of being monomaniacal about this. Okay, I don't want any more said about it. Yeah, also he had this other lines to be talked about. Gurudev stimulated Mahayagnas. They hadn't been practiced for a long time. Some say since the Mahabharata, 5,000 years before, on the scale that he organized them. And somebody else says, yeah, but back in the 17th century, there was one organized against the Muslim guy, Aurangzeb, because of the way he was treating Hindus and Sikhs. There was terrible persecution. And some people say even a century before, but that's up to whatever their agenda is. The truth is that when he set up, when Karpatri set up the Mahayagya for world peace in 1944, that interests so many meditators, they say, oh, Maharishi organized that, Gurudev organized that. Well, neither's true. It was Swami Karpatri, but Swami Karpatri, apart from being arguably the most famous Indian Swami and the most well thought of Swami in India at that time, was Gurudev's principal disciple. He was his first disciple, and he was the one named in his first will, his first vasiyat, and he wanted him as his successor. He definitely wanted him as his successor, what anybody else thinks. And he repeated his request for him to be his successor when shortly before he died. And apparently it was made very clear to Gurudev that he didn't want to be his successor. After all, he'd already turned down the opportunity in the late 1930s, 1940s. He'd already been offered it and decided not to. Sorry. Good. I just got a message from someone. So come back to what I was saying. Yeah, so it was Swami Kapatri. And that's not to denigrate anybody else. It's just a fact. He was the one who organized the great yagya for world peace that was, which was trying to end the Second World War. And in fact,
Paul, may I ask? But it was also an underlying spiritual renaissance in times and years after how many years of colonial rule. From British and French and Portuguese and all these European nations. So it's quite a phenomenon that the spirituality was at the base of this independency, without get off. But the value of spirituality is of such a tremendous phenomenon that
I'm glad you've asked me that, because I'm not keeping to my schedule at all. Nothing. I'm just ad-libbing. And one of the points I wanted to make was that Gurudev actually met Mahatma Gandhi, who's well known for a couple of things. Apart from getting himself assassinated, he put forward the idea of, peaceful resistance to things that you didn't agree with, to, what's the word, ahimsa, the harmless way of carrying on, that he was particularly troubled about untouchability. And he was troubled, as you intimated just now, about the Western presence in a country that didn't support the warfare. It might have had a huge gun carriage factory in Jabalpur. It still has, but it wasn't wanting to be a part of the war. And he set up that equation, quit India. Quit India was a message to the British to get out. We've had enough. And it was around that time that Swami Kapatri became quite politicized. He, as you say, there's a kind of marriage here of spirituality and politics, and you wouldn't expect Gurudev or Swami Kapatri to do what they did, but they did. They both became highly politicized, especially Kapatri. And that's the reason that he didn't become Shankaracharya, is because he was too consumed with his allegiance to his political movement. He set up, what did they call themselves? The Ram Rajya Parishad, the re-establishment of the rule of Raja Ram. They were basically wanting, I think you intimated it, the revival of Indian values. And the government, which was a mixture of British and Indians, set up politics on the basis of Hindu code. And Gurudev didn't just sit in a room being spiritual. He hosted the meeting. He was very prominent at fighting for the rights of Indians to continue the world the way that they lived. And that was controversial even with Indians. It wasn't like between the British and the Indians, not like that. There was a lot of forward-thinking Indians that didn't want to go back into what they saw presumably as the Middle Ages of India, especially women. I mean, one of the things about the Hindu code was to give women a chance to inherit property rights, all sorts of stuff, and they were fighting against that. I've got an interesting cartoon from that time. Tell you what, I'm going to run through some pictures now. Yeah, is that all right with everyone?
Yes.
Yeah, it'll give me a few moments to catch my breath, and it'll give you a bit of a film show. That's Dandi Swami, Krishnanand Saraswati. That was, and it says at the bottom there that he was from Varanasi, which is a point of contention because he's thought to be a follower of the southern Shankaracharya. So it's quite interesting that on that primal picture of him, it says Varanasi. There's an early picture of Gurudev in a cave with a nice pair of wooden sandals, very uncomfy. There's another one taken in a studio. It's what they used to do in studios. People that have their photograph taken, and the photographer put some background to make it more mysterious. That there's a temple there, and there's a temple on the other side. And they didn't have color pictures in those days. Everything was black and white. So yeah, those old pictures are always monocolor. So this one's obviously retouched.
May I ask you one question?
Yes.
We see on these pictures always this stick. We know what it is, but can you elaborate on that as a symbol which has the Adi Shankara also had already, or?
Yeah, it's a piece of bamboo. That's it. It's a piece of bamboo, and it's called a danda, and that means that you're a monk of the of his order, and that's what Adi Shankara did. He instituted the idea of having a bunch of monks, and so all these guys are Shankara monks. This is the ashram that Gurudev had built in 1936. Gurudev lived in the forests, in the jungles for the most part, until 1930, when he became reacquainted with his guru in Allahabad, otherwise known as Prayag. And his guru encouraged him very gently to actually go out and meet the people, to actually spend time in the cities and actually speak to people. And he took him quite literally. He went and he opened his own ashram in Benares. And there's the foundation stone, which a friend of mine took a photograph, which was really handy. It says Sri Brahma Niwas, and that was 1936. These are all kind of contemporary pictures, but it gives you a feel of what it was like then, doesn't it? A little bit. And that's something he had built down the road. He had a little temple built down the road, and a Sanskrit school he had built down there. And that was in 1938. And we found that out by deciphering the legend on there. It was really, we did a bit of online chatting, and I had some help from members. That's a very early picture of Gurudev, became Shankaracharya. That's when he had become Shankaracharya. Don't ask me what happened to his hair. In India, they shave their heads for all sorts of reasons when their fathers died. Perhaps this was after his guru had died, or because he became Shankaracharya. I'm as ignorant as anybody else on this. And there he is on top of an elephant. These pictures, you might like to know, came from, what's his name? Raj Varma. Raj Varma was Maharishi's uncle. Okay, and he was a photographer. He didn't necessarily take these pictures, but he supplied them to me anyway. That's a picture of Lord Shiva that is a painting that, when I was there, was hung at Jyotirmath, the monastery. There's a picture of Adi Shankara, which is also a painting which was hung at the monastery when I went there. And that bit of bunting is just a bit of bunting. How's about that? It's a well-known picture of Adi Shankara. It's a nice one, and his disciples. That's supposed to be the 5 different sorts of deities. There are one is Surya, the sun. Another one is Ganesh. Another one is Devi. Another one is Krishna or Vishnu, and the other one is Shankar, Shiva. So there's lots to talk about with that, but that's an image that I took up in Joshimath. That's the ashram that he had built in 1942. There's another picture of the ashram. It's a bit mysterious, isn't it? That guy standing there in orange. It's quite beautiful, I think. And that's a picture from the inside of the ashram, and that says Bhavatit Dhyan Karo, which means practice transcendental meditation. And this is a picture. Can everybody hear me okay? Hello?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Because I can't see it. While I'm giving you this presentation, I can't see anything other than what I'm doing. Sorry about that. So this is a picture of the mandap in that huge Mahayagya. And there's a close-up of that's where they did all the prayers incessantly, day and night, over these fires and that. And there's a press cutting of the day, and it says quite clearly mid the second paragraph that it's under the able guidance of Swami Hariharanand Saraswati, whose real name to you and me is Swami Kalpatri. So that's that. So we were talking about the kind of surge against the government's attitude, and this was an early bit of it. It's where the Hindu code hadn't come up. It was just talking about the Hindu Law Committee, and it names Swami Brahmanand by name there in the first paragraph as presiding over the special session. So he got his feet well dirty, if you want, with politics. There's no doubt about it. And there's a picture of the Mahayagya. So that was his thing. He was trying to get everybody, you can say, into a Vedic lifestyle, a Vedic thinking at home and outside, practices that had a lot of them have died out. Here's a picture of him on Guru Purnima, the full moon day of July the 20th, 1947. And if on our right of the picture, that's Kalpatri standing holding a whisk, and our left on the front is somebody called Revolutionary Sadhu, and he looks very wild, and he's holding a trident with a drum on it, and he is otherwise better known now, though he just died, as Swami Swarupanand, quite a controversial figure, a disciple of Gurudev. There's a picture taken the same day, which I've recently had restored by my son. Here's a book that I see. That's why I know that day. It was the 20th of July, 1947, because that was the day that Mahesh, oh, where is it? It's gone. There's a picture missing in this sequence. Would you believe it? Anyway, he put together a preface for it whilst he was sitting on the banks of the Narmada on that very day. And there we have it. And this is you don't need to know about that. This is how you convert his birthday. You can ask me any of this any other time. There's a picture of a group of them at the ashram, and that appears to be just after Mahesh had become, he used to be known as Mahesh Prasad in the ashram. He was never known by his full name of Mahesh Srivastava, but he was known by his first and middle name, Mahesh Prasad, and then he became a brahmachari, at which time he became Brahmachari Mahesh. So there we have it. That, to becoming that, he wrote a book about Jyotirmath, which is right showing on the screen, it says Jyotirmay Darshan. And he also put together this, which is really, really great. And it says at the bottom, Brahmachari Sri Maheshji. This is called Kalyana Path. And this is a book of quotations of Gurudev. It wasn't a big book, but it's got some interesting quotes, which I've been working on lately and which I will bring out in my new book. Actually, when I say it's my new book, I've translated various books about Gurudev, but I've never written one about him. And whilst I was translating a fourth book, something hit me whereby I started needing to write more and more about Gurudev. And it's resulted in this huge volume that I'm writing. We were talking about Swami Brahmananda being against the anti-Hindu. He was anti-Hindu code. I don't know if this means anything to you, this picture. I'm going to leave it there for a little while. It's a contemporary cartoon. And basically, it's showing Nehru with a nice comfy mattress, which is called the Hindu Code Bill. And it's showing a Swami, we won't have any prizes for which Swami, who's saying, no, I'm happy on my bed of nails. And that the baby, which is called New India, also lying on the bed of nails, but crying. And the Swami is saying, none of your new fandangled ideas here, my man. I find it amusing to think that that's how he was being pictured. In fact, he was just being very, very traditional. Here's a picture that a postman at Rishikesh gave me, and I've shared it over the web, and now it's everywhere. And it's one of my favorite pictures. Not my favorite, but it's one of my favorites. There's now Brahmachari Mahesh set up this newspaper, and it ran to about 100 issues or so, maybe, like I was trying to calculate today, maybe 108 issues. And they just contained so much about Gurudev's wisdom, his quotes, and they're so hard to find. I only know of one person who has them, and they're out in India, and it's proven really difficult to get copies of them, which is a drag. There's a cover of a book that Brahmachari Sri Maheshji put together, and these are actual color pictures of Gurudev. When a movie was taken of him in Lucknow in 1952, they used one or two rolls of black and white film, and they used one of color film. And so I pulled these images up for your delectation. These are genuine color pictures. And you see on his forehead, it's called kumkum. It's a sandalwood paste, which is supposed to cool the brow. Okay, and that's also from that. Here's, as I was saying, mainly you're only going to see black and white photographs of Gurudev. How's the time going? Oh, that's all right.
It's 1 hour gone.
Yeah, now here's a sequence of photographs taken in Mussoorie. One or two you'll recognize, maybe you won't. This was taken on Shankaracharya Day, a day celebrating Adi Shankar on the main mall at Mussoorie in North India. And what's going on in this picture, it takes a little bit of explaining. If you look at the bottom right, you'll see a guy with shades on with a steering wheel. I think he's actually an airplane pilot, but in this case, he's driving this vehicle. It's actually a chassis, okay? And Gurudev's throne and his umbrella and so forth are mounted on a chassis of which his attendants are either seated or standing. Mahesh is seated, as you can see at the front. So there they go, along the mall. Dun, 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 dun. And he's now set up at the top of the mall. Okay, and a bit more. They're doing arati ceremony, and then the famous one of Brahmachari Mahesh who is passing something or receiving something from the guy with the Nehru hat. We didn't get to this. Now, towards the end of his life, Gurudev did get a bit slower and a bit more retiring. It was thought that he was unwell, but it was difficult for them to determine what was wrong with him. But in this particular case, whilst he was in Delhi, he met with the first president of India, Rajendra Prasad. I think he met him through Rajendra's mother. She says, you want to go and see him. No, she didn't have that voice. That's essentially what happened. And then he stayed and he spent ages with Gurudev. And that says Yogash Chitta Vritti Nirodha. And that's one of my favorite sayings. It's out of the Yoga Sutras, isn't it? So there we have it. I'm going to go back to the beginning. And I can't possibly give, like, if I've only done this for an hour, I've got so many things to say about Gurudev that I haven't managed to say. I would like, though, to say a few things right now which have something directly to do with him. And that is that he brought meditation to Indians. He brought, via his student, Brahmachari Mahesh, he brought meditation to Westerners. Now, I can hear people already arguing me and say, people meditated before that, don't talk public. He gave a new meaning to meditation. Yet we all knew the word meditate. It meant to sit and contemplate and to be peaceful and to contemplate something. And the way that he portrayed meditation was very, very different. And in the latter part of his work, he was teaching more and more people to meditate. He gave them Diksha. He let them into his room and would initiate them using mantra and telling them how to use it. And there were tons of people sitting around when he was in town, as it were. There would be a collection of people meditating out in the grounds, and they would be administered by the brahmacharis, by Mahesh Brahmachari and any other, as to how to meditate, making sure their meditation was going well. This was the real revolution. For Indians, the revolution was him revitalizing Hinduism. But there was this extra thing that he was doing. I'm not sure that he did it deliberately. Who can say? But it happened that he taught more and more and more people to meditate. He brought meditation back to ordinary, everyday, working people. And essentially, what is meditation? It's an attempt to, what is samadhi? Samadhi means to reconcile differences. What does nirvana means? It means to extinguish, to be liberated. And that's what he was teaching people. He was teaching us to settle within ourselves. And that's what I'd left Britain but wanting. I had spiritual dissatisfaction. And when I found out how to become settled, how I found out to kind of basically resolve the Etch-a-Sketch equation, that you all know the way that you Etch-a-Sketch, you do a sketch on that machine. And in order to get rid of it, you do a technique, you shake it, and it all disappears. And with meditation, you do this technique of like disengagement. You call it anything you want, but you're basically letting go of your small self in favor of just being at one. And that's what Gurudev gave to the West. He's completely unacknowledged for that. And Maharishi is acknowledged too. At some point, people sort of praise him for it. But that's what both of them have contributed to us. So I would like to leave you at this talk on that note, saying he is the godfather of meditation. Thank you, Jai Gurudev.
Thank you, Paul. It's wonderful introduction for this, not just introduction, it's a wonderful talk. And if anybody would like to present a question, I would like to ask. Declan Fitzmaurice, can you speak, Declan?
I'll try, Roland.
Yes, go ahead.
Good. Thank you, Roland. Thank you, Paul. Excellent talk. Thank you very much. One question on Brahmananda's parents. He seemed to have a spiritual inclination very early on, from the age of 9. Did that come from his family?
I think so. He's said to have had a very strong engagement with his grandfather. And when his grandfather died, he was really upset by it. And without identifying personally, I know that I had an extraordinarily strong bond with my grandfather. And when he died, I went to pieces. And I even said that I would give away all my toys if I could get my grandfather back. Now, I get the impression that Brahmanand had a much stronger and deep-seated connection with his grandfather. And I would assume that, yes, a lot of his spiritual knowledge and viewpoint came from that grandfather. They were a strict Brahmin family. They were relatively wealthy, and they were landowners. They were absolutely amazing. But whether or not Indians know about it, I'd say, I'd lean to say they don't know. I had a word with one of Maharish's pundits, and I wanted to squeeze out of him what he knew about Gurudev. And I thought, this is a really good opportunity. I'm on good terms with him. I'm on a FaceTime with him. It's like, tell me what you know about Gurudev. And do you know what he said? I don't know anything about it. He was a Shankaracharya. That's it. Well, what that means is what I was saying earlier, is that if he was a Shankaracharya, then he is the living, thinking, breathing essence of Adi Shankara. That's it. It's not individual. He doesn't need to know him. And Gurudev said many times in his life, I am only teaching I am only speaking as Shankaracharya. I'm not coming with my own ideas. And that's revolutionary in Western terms. It really is. I mean, people want you to have your opinion. We're all educated to it. Well, but what's your opinion on this? You wouldn't do very well on a quiz night, would you? You know, on a topical subject. Well, I take the opinion of Adi Shankara. It's like, well, okay, let's end there. But yeah, I think he's had a pervasive influence, and I think that sometimes he's been misused. I think that there's a huge move towards Hinduism, Hindutva, however you pronounce it, Hindutva, in India. The the more emphasis on making India more Hindu, and you could source that to Gurudev, but you couldn't blame him for it, because his was total non-violence. He praised Gandhi personally. He said, you have brought ahimsa to the political arena. You know, like, in other words, who could do better than that? You've taken the meaning of Hinduism, ahimsa, and you've taken it into the political orbit. So he was totally against any violence. And, you know, on a practical basis too, he, you know, like with the tiger treating its wounds, he set free a buffalo that had been put in the forest as bait for a tiger hunt. And, you know, he was totally intolerant of violence, of ahimsa, of himsa. God, I'm wrapping myself up here. So he had a very benevolent influence. And I think sometimes, and this is what happens in politics, sometimes people use religion, they use religious quotes to defend themselves doing unspeakable things. And I can see that at some time Gurudev's going to get the blame for it, but I'm not his spokesman. I'm just an observer. I ought to say that actually. I mean, like as much as I'm happy to talk about Gurudev for 20 hours, I mean, we could go on all night, okay? But he's an interesting guy to me. Maharishi is an interesting guy to me. Primarily, it was me that hitchhiked to India. It's me that's been going through my life, who got married, who had grief with this person. I'm not in a state of eternal fandom. I think that Gurudev was incredible at what he did. He transformed things for Indians, but he brought about a situation that all of us, everybody attending this talk, has heard about meditation. And each one of them don't think that meditation is just sitting there thinking about a flower. Each one of them don't think that it's about sitting thinking of Jesus on the cross. We've moved from a point where that's how it was defined to something which is different. It's not that those things were wrong. Some of us as meditators could probably benefit from sitting there thinking about a flower or about Jesus's life, very much so. But he's changed the way that we look at that. I mean, through Maharishi largely. And when I think we've all had to defend meditation. I know I did when I came back, and it's like, no, meditation's not like that. We don't do that. We do this and we do that. But it has changed everything. And I'd like to say that I think that the word guru is a very new thing in our mainstream society. One of the things I wanted to say about Gurudev is that I don't have a guru. We don't have a guru culture. The first guru that I can remember coming to Britain was after I went to India. I came back here and I was looking around and somebody said, "Oh, have you heard about him, the child guru?" And I said, "What?" And they said, "Yeah, there's a boy, he's like 13. He's speaking at Alexandra Palace. He's a guru." I said, "Wow, so what's that all about?" We didn't really have a guru culture. And to my mind, you can't have a guru culture. You've either got a guru or you haven't. And a guru is somebody that you can go and visit and talk to, who takes care of you and takes responsibility for you. Not just somebody that you unload your money to or you worship. It's somebody who you have a personal relationship. And when they're no longer around, you no longer got a guru. You've got to get a new one. And Gurudev himself was against the idea of being fixated by the idea of a soul guru. And he said, we move on in life. You learn so much from one teacher, and if you can't learn more from, go and get another teacher. It's not a problem. So he was really quite liberal in these matters. I think that we now have a point in the West where we have a bit of a fixation with the idea of Gurudom. We have a misunderstanding of what it means. And I can't blame Maharishi for that, but it would have helped over the years if some of this had been explained as to who was Gurudev. And I've, yeah, okay. I think I've given a talk today, but it's probably one of the first talks there is about Gurudev, which is ridiculous. He died a year after I was born. It's like it's been a long time, hasn't it? I haven't got that much time on the truck. I'll probably only live to 100 or 110 or something.
Okay. Volkmar, you wanted to...
Thank you. Yes. At first, a very warm, heartfelt greetings to the people I see, which I know from our course 2 years ago in India. And and a question to Paul, I try to make it short. Is it true that a Shankaracharya must not leave India because after the Second World War, Gurudev might have gone to the West himself, to Europe or America? There were ships and planes and everything.
I'm not quite sure the question. They couldn't travel, you say?
And I've once heard, it's maybe a rumor, or once you're Shankaracharya, you must stay in India.
Yeah, it's a good point.
After the Second World War, he might have gone to Europe or America or through the whole world himself and teach meditation.
Yeah, it's half true. Half true. Okay, so Gurudev as Shankaracharya was called Jagad Guru. Okay, Jagad means either universe or the world, which is much the same thing to the old world, that this is the universe where we live. So that means he's guru to the world. It's a different meaning of the guru. It means that I am the teacher of everyone. But Gurudev himself said that only the Asti people need a guru, that Nasti people do not need a guru. I need to clarify what those terms mean. Asti means that you're a believer. Nasti means that you're not a believer. So as far as Gurudev was concerned, he was only concerned to teach those people with an empathy for Hindu teachings. And therefore, he had no reason at all to leave India. None whatsoever. But more than that, and this touches on a completely different point, is that there is a prohibition, a class thing. It's to do with what jati you're in, that if you cross water, it's called samudra yatra, that if you cross the water, that your status, your caste status is lost. Okay, so when Mahatma Gandhi went to Bombay to sail to Britain to earn his law degree, he was told in no uncertain terms that if he got on that boat, he would lose his caste status, and he did it anyway. So you're right. He got away with it. Mahatma Gandhi got away with losing his caste status. But there are many people who would be very apprehensive about crossing water. And one of them was Gurudev's disciple, one of Gurudev's disciples. And he was still talking about not crossing water in the 1970s. So there's an issue. But clearly Maharishi had no such reservations. He'd travel in anything. But in fact, Gurudev traveled in anything. I don't know about boats, but he definitely traveled in airplanes. So although he was against Western technology, let's be honest, he wasn't against getting on a train or getting on a plane. It was like, oh, I've got to do that. We're all in that situation, aren't we? We do stuff that we'd possibly rather not do. But yeah, he wouldn't have traveled to Britain. He had no need to. His perception, Gurudev's perception, was that what he was and what he stood for was the light of religion, and the other religions were like little kind of offshoots of a main hall. So if you imagine, he's sitting in a hall with all the light on, and that there's kind of these sub areas which were lit by the hall. I translated a talk that he gave about it, and I don't have it to hand. I don't have anything to hand, but it's there. So yeah.
I remember about this question whether Gurudev is present in these days still in the public. Where we were in 2023 in South India at the southern seat of the Shankaracharya in Sringeri, and we just needed to mention what we were doing there, and we referred ourselves, our teacher training course, to Brahmananda Saraswati, and they instantly knew and appreciated our our project there and gave us a blessing, just because being connected to Swami Brahmananda Saraswati. So it was a wonderful kind of feeling. Thank you, Paul. Is there any other question? If our attendance today, it's wonderful to hear you all talking and seeing you. Anybody else want you to present the question? Because think about, we are going to meet in 1 month again. Then I would like to say, anybody knew or knows anyway, I just may show you this book once more. Paul Mason has written, and you know it, it's The Roots of TM, and under which we all appreciated for many, many years, Paul Mason talking to us. And now after these many years, we are in the position of hearing his voice. Okay, Dave, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I had an initiation yesterday, my second initiation, and I was asked by a student, the fruit. Did the guru eat the fruit after it was offered, or is there anything known about that?
I can't answer that. I think somebody else is going to answer that.
We have to remember, Dave, that's a very important point, because Paul Mason, when he, as I understand your biography, that you were traveling to India, but you never intended to become a teacher of meditation. You appreciated your time living there and appreciating the Indian culture, but for one or another reason, you left it to the others to become teachers of meditation. You have been following your task, your mission, wasn't it that like?
Maybe.
So you can't answer that question from Dave.
It's so complicated. Obviously, after I've been taught to meditation, I thought, oh, it'd be nice to be able to tell other people about this. And I'll be honest, I have. I've taught a handful of people, but because I always think you can only teach what you know. And if you know something, then you can teach it. There are many ways to teach meditation. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating and the tasting and the digesting. And the basic thing about meditation is, as Maharishi said, any meditation that can transcend itself is transcendental meditation. And if you can teach somebody to meditate and they can transcend their meditation and be at one with themselves and fulfill the phrase Yogash Chitta Vritti Nirodha, sorry, I'm losing it. They've taught them to meditate, and Maharishi himself admitted that there's many ways to meditate, and he wasn't clinging to the idea there is only one way. So yeah, I flirted with the idea of being a teacher of meditation, and I've even spoken to Roland about attending a teacher's training. But I'm very bad about being obedient. You know, if you say memorize this phrase, I'm going to say something utterly different afterwards. So I'm a maverick. You can ask a maverick to be obedient, but do bear in mind that Maharishi was the ultimate maverick. You know, you might be repeating the words he told you to tell, but he would never have done that himself. That's just a thought. That's me being a bit naughty.
Okay, friends, we have been together now in this satsang gathering for 1.5 hours, and if you don't mind, then we haven't been structuring a clear plan how this first meeting is going to happen, but I allow myself to invite you for at least few minutes to meditate together. And allow me to say thank you very much for this talk with Paul Mason today. It's been a great joy to hear you, and I just want to mention that we're going to meet in 1 month again, first Sunday next month, with the same Zoom link. And there's nothing else for me left to say. Do you want to say something, Paul?
Well, thank you for having me. I hope I've answered some of your unvoiced questions about Gurudev. Really, I hinted at it while I was giving the talk. My reason for writing this book about Gurudev, it came out of the 4th book that I'm translating. And I realized that I had a few things to say, that I actually had a personal interest in Gurudev's life. So I'm really working very, very hard on putting together a really comprehensive view of Gurudev's life. And it's not just because I'm interested in Gurudev, it's all the various subjects that evokes. It's about you. It's about me. It's about our lives. It's not an academic study about some gone and forgotten old guy. It's very real. I think both Gurudev and Maharishi have been signal lights in our lifetime, or before our lifetime for some people. And I think that there's all manner of people that we could be studying, we could be listening to, we could be reading about. I've got biographies of people on my shelves, of Jeff Beck, of Arthur Love, all sorts of people. Is that his name, Arthur? Arthur Lee, Out of Love. So there's all this stuff that we could put our heads in. And what I've found over the years is that putting my head on reading translation work of Gurudev pays me some inner dividend. I can't explain why. It's a contact. It's refreshing. It's like, you know, it's a hackneyed expression, but it's like watering plants. They just sort of get refreshed. You don't know quite why that happens, but you do know that it happens. And I feel like that with Gurudev. And I've given this talk not because I'm a public speaker. It's actually partly to do with ITMA. ITMA invited me when they were in India to talk to them. And since that time, I've perhaps given half a dozen or so talks online. And this is the first one that's actually a proper talk. You know, it's something that I've considered, and I have like the point of reference, who was it? And I can be absolutely honest, I don't feel I've got hardly anything over. All I've been able to do is to introduce myself. Thanks to Roland, he asked me about why I went to India. So it's been too personalized. I never meant to mention me in it. I wanted to talk about Gurudev, but believe you me, I have soaked up an awful lot of information, and I think it's good to us while we're alive to be focused on somebody as what I would say was a holy guy and a wise guy and a well-meaning guy. Whether or not you like Hinduism, whether you not like you kind of like curries, it doesn't really matter. It's here is someone whose whole life was thrown over to the spirit, investigating the spirit. He left home to investigate that, and I did too. And you know, it's all of us, we all leave our comfort to go and find something. Everybody who studies meditation is going off and doing something different from their friends and that. And I think that we all need to be together. That's part of why I like doing this today. And it was my idea, I believe, to call it satsang, which basically, as Declan reminded me today, means good company. It means we're together with, you know, each other. That's what today is about. It's not just about Gurudev. Strangely enough, it's about us coming together. It's about people who meditate normally on their own to actually come together and be in the same space and talk on a level with one another. The weekly meetings that have been proposed by ITMA are more chit chat. There'll be a bit less of Paul gives a talk, or Avner gives a talk, or Roland gives a talk, or Bob gives a talk. It's more about, we were talking about the Beatles the other night, and it was like, I'd love to talk about the Beatles, but I want to talk with other people. So I want us to be together chatting about what we believe happened or what we believe that was said. And what I want is a community. Satsang is more about a community. I think it's high time that meditators actually had somewhere to go and hang out, like a coffee bar, except this is a kind of cosmic coffee bar. That's what I want. It's no money. It's no purpose other than to be in good companionship, get to know each other, maybe email one another, maybe have little personal, get-togethers or whatever on Zoom or whatever medium. It's about being a community, and that's something we learned about Roots of TM. It's had its different peaks of interest, sometimes be really a hotbed of discussion, of interaction, and it's quietened down a lot. But one thing that did come out of it was the need for a community, people to talk together and be together. And out of Roots of TM, I know a lot of friendships have been formed, a lot of friendships have been rekindled, and it's made for a sense of community. And I think that was something missing. And it's not just about sort of TMers, it's about meditators broadly speaking, and it's about any form of meditation that is genuinely trying to get to that point. I say trying to get to that point, I'll be shocked for such remarks, but hoping to attain that transcendence, that going beyond the chitta-vrittis, that disturbance of the mind, and settling down to that still inner being. So I thank you all for coming today, and let's meet again. And remember, if you've got something to say, then let Roland or one of the organizers here know, and we can hear you talking another day. It's not about me. I've volunteered to give this initial chat, and I've agreed to give any amounts of chats. I mean, it must be a nutter, but I will give these chats in that spirit of sharing. I really will, because I've learned a lot, and I feel like sharing a lot. And that's the tall and the short of it, really. But it wouldn't happen but for you people coming along, and thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Paul. I fully agree. I wouldn't have said it better. I wanted to say, yes, let's be together, enjoy together, just to be together, see together, enjoy life together, because it's a beautiful kind of being together. And I thank you all to be present here today, and I'm looking forward for the next meeting, for the next gathering. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Thank you, everyone.